Welcome to Chronicle. We are talking about Italy, within an economy that is going to dress up in easy customs, and that punctually gives us new food for thought. Currently Italy is a country that takes away what you don't have, to tell you that you need it. There are a multitude of people who 20 years ago were looking for work, and are still looking for it. There are those who have done business hoping that the economy would take a different turn, and are still hoping. Italians love to brag about architecture, history, and great poets, but those are good old days. Italy is a place where the meaning of right and left stops at the gates of the Quirinal, where choices are made, where decisions are made that have skimmed the economy to the point of making it useful, only to a third of the country. What has made Italy a place where a person can squatter in your home, and they are protected by law for doing so. A place where, between thief and victim, the victim goes to jail. A place where an initiate receipt is prosecuted, and the mafia does business in the open. A place where the same skilled work is underpaid by European and American standards. A place that mortifies farmers and fishermen, in favor of foreign imports. A place where anyone can enter, even with a dinghy. A place where you can pay the same amount of taxes as Sweden and Denmark, but without even having half the economic power of these nations. What has reduced the Italian state to a mix of confusion and malaise? Italy is the country where the ambulance service, in order to earn some extra money, is willing to kill the people it transports. Italy is the country where a group of workers had to accept a wage of €1.20 an hour. Italy is the country where if you stay on the streets without food, water or shelter, you can't get help, because first aid is intended for illegal immigration. Italy is the country that pretended to fight the mafia, but accepted its support. Italy is a country that jumps the line, because every Italian felt like he was put in last place. In Italy, entrepreneurs are strangled by taxes, and if an employee wants to survive, he often has to do it with crumbs. Italy is that place where some pensioners have been seen picking up rubbish, because they don't have resources. Italy is the country where meritocracy has less value than a recommendation. And if you want to find a job, just send your CV abroad. Italy is the country that would also sell the Colosseum, and if it did, Italians would have nice cold beer and spaghetti instead of protesting in the squares, in honor of the good old days. In short, Italy is a country where opportunity has the same price for everyone, but 3/3 of Italians cannot afford it. These are the premises that have brought Dante's country to its knees. Giorgia Meloni is not the architect of all evil. It is evident that this given president has followed in the wake of his predecessors and has adapted to the scheme of non-priorities. The Italian government is a person who looks the problem in the face, and looks the other way, worrying about something else. To be more specific, I am referring to the fact that, at a time when the country was emerging from an unprecedented crisis, the government passed a law that removed 5% for baby and feminine hygiene products. While an endless number of people are looking for work, the government took the initiative to create facilities for those who already have a permanent contract. And while merchants closed their businesses shattered by utility costs, the government renewed power supply contracts with Libya, Russia, Iraq and Saudi Arabia. This pattern of regression has been going on since the Craxi government. As long as the economy does not give everyone the same opportunities, cannot be defined as an economy. If you have even touched the idea that the Italian president is working for the Italians, it means that you are not clear about the priorities of an elected president in Italy. In a dedicated article I will show you why it is not possible to become president without the endorsement of central banks. For now, I will focus on the wake of this mechanism, the Italian economy. In the course of history, the Italian state has ceded management to NATO, we have ceded power to the European Commission, we have ceded the marks to the Chinese, and sovereignty to the banks. Do you want Italy to shine again? It can be done. I'd like to show you the 20 buttons that restart the core of this engine that is hiccuping, and that we call Italia. Stay with me until the end of the video. If you want to know, of course, I'll try to show you that it's possible to restart the Italian economy. Here are the 20 steps to be able to do it. 1. Italy is a finite economy. Get over it. At this point you are thinking, so what? Accepting that we have sent the country to be sodomized is the first step, because if you don't understand it now, then you don't see any need to fight for this country. The economy is not about dismantling the country, but understanding the only real reason why this economy needs to be relaunched. The Italian companies that work are less and less from year to year are often incorporated. In the end, only the corporations, the bosses and the people will be left starving. This is not economy. It is as if a parent had two children. The first eats the second. Perhaps, if you do not realize it, it is useless for you to continue with this article. Step 2. Scale back government spending. You don't need 700 people to run the country, and not even a president of the chamber. One president and 12 ministers would be enough. Think about it and you will discover that, the way our government is structured, 13 members in the chamber are more than enough, and at this point you would think that without opposition a dictatorship would be created. And I ask you, why do you think the Senate was born? Apart from buying luxury houses and designer boats and, yes, the number of senators must also be reduced. Step 3. The Italian government must start giving priority to Italian production. Why psychopathic reason does Italy buy the energy needs of electricity abroad when in Italy there are several companies able to make energy autonomous by calculating the energy needs of the average Italian family? Let us do this. Let me explain it with another example. Why are fishermen going bankrupt and fish imports are increasing? In many Italian regions there are endless crops of fruit and vegetables. So why is it that when you go to the supermarket kiwi say made in Kazakhstan on kiwis? Why does it say made in Spain on oranges? Knowing that in Sicily citrus fruits are of the highest quality, did you know that Italian fishing and agriculture can meet the needs of up to 7 times the volume of the entire country? Why crush the country's domestic economy in this way? Well, we all know it because importation facilitates and increases the income of the state pockets, but it is of no benefit to the people, so priority to those who produce. Step 4. Italy's social security system is rudimentary, poorly managed and slow. I know how much those who work under the INPS brand will hate this video article and maybe even me for saying it. But a 70-year-old who receives less than 1,100 euros according to a statistic is not living, he is surviving. He has spent his life working, and to pay taxes you have to have a job with regular documents. Do you have a vague idea of how many people have been looking for a real employment contract for over 30 years? And after coming out of a system where no one wanted to pay state contributions for you, you get to an age where someone will say to you, well, you didn't pay enough. Doesn't that sound cruel to you? The new generations of politicians can also abandon the idea of the pension system and adopt another type of approach that we will call pensions bound, or call it what you like. At the birth of each new member of the community, the state, if diligent, should pay a sum of 7,000 euros into an investment fund, to families who cannot afford it, and if it's too much to ask, the family of the unborn child has plenty of time to be able to return them to the state. You retire between the ages of 55 and 65, am I right? Do you have a vague idea of how much a diversified fund can yield in 65 years locked by concentrating the amount of the starting sum in bonds, stocks and ETFs? Think about it. And there is no longer a need for INPS. There are INPS executives who receive salaries between 16,000 and 30,000 euros a month. Do you know where they get that money from? From your future. They've taken them away from you. Of course at our age it's not a problem, but when you and I get to that age, I know you'll remember a term, pensions bound. Step 5. Take care of the startups. An entrepreneur must have time to stabilize his business idea before thinking that he can bear the dead weight that the Italian state represents, because if you are swimming and maybe you are a good swimmer, and I attach stones to your body, then not only will you struggle to swim, but you will drown, or you will close your VAT number and reopen abroad, as thousands of Italian entrepreneurs have done, systematically. Therefore, as a fifth rule, zero taxes for the first 3 years of a company's life and then leveling it to a tax burden appropriate to its turnover. Step 6. Funding ideas. We begin to realize the fact that the word economy is based entirely on entrepreneurs. The entrepreneur becomes an entrepreneur and when they have a business idea, and if that idea is not funded, then you don't have an economy. But here a question arises. Where do you get the money to finance the revolutionary ideas of entrepreneurs? And this is where step number 7 comes into play. Step 7. Eliminate passive costs from the country. And here I could indulge myself in writing kilometers of Italian waste, but I will mention only a few, in no particular order. Do Italians derive any benefit from the millions of euros that the state sends to party newspapers? No. Here we are recovering a few million. How many times has Venice used the Moses Project? It has cost millions and costs millions to maintain, but it is rarely activated if it works and is not blocked. NATO receives billions of euros from the Italian state, just to accept rules relating to the administration of defense. For the record, we have also ceded sovereignty over how to defend ourselves in the event of an attack. Couldn't this money save the economy? And then there's the fact that the Italian state pays rents for buildings it could very well buy. And there is also a way to dismantle the regions. If you check how they are structured, you will find that they are not of any use to the existence on this planet. But it can be done without leaving employees without work, and in a moment I will explain how. I could go on listing all the Italian waste, but I don't know if the space on the server will be enough for me. Step 8. Computerize the communication process. The only way to have a true democracy is to take into account the will of the people. A website that centralizes supply and demand would suffice. The bill can come from the chamber, the Senate, and the people. If the proposal receives enough support, the Chamber of Deputies, the Senate, the people, 2 votes out of 3 win. I remind you that the people have the right to have their say as much as the chamber. I know that as Italians it has been forgotten, but if, for example, the people in the Senate say no to the proposal of the chamber, and that law is approved anyway, it is called mutiny. Do you know how many times the Italian people have been mutinied? Think. Step 9. Send the army to Italian war zones. And here is anyone who is thinking in Latin. Italian war zones? I'm referring to those nerve centers isolated from the rest of society that have no desire to belong to a united community. To give you a few examples, Scampia, Zen in Palermo, in the Red Church area of Milan. If you don't recover every last of the people who live in degradation, you can't say that you are working for the community to relaunch the Italian economy in those areas forgotten by the government. You have to turn a loss into an asset, and no one should feel lost. No one should be left behind. The more people you neglect, the more the underworld will have. Step 10. Eliminate all Roma camps in the territory immediately. The experiment and the hope that the Roma community can merge and adopt our civilization has lasted more than a century. They have continued to live in the norms of the Roma, coming to constitute a danger to others but above all to themselves. They must be removed from the country. On Chronicle.day I will present an article dedicated to this community. Step 11. Line of fire on the coasts of Lampedusa. Be careful. I'm not suggesting to shoot down anyone who wants to enter the country, but only not to let anyone pass from the dotted line. If I worked for a company and I don't do my job, don't you think I would be fired? The state is not doing its job in blocking these masses who need help, but to help them you have to send troops to their country. There is no better solution. For every single immigrant hosted in Italy, the pockets of the caste receive funds from the European Commission. The Meloni government is profiting from the lives of these people and the hardship of the rest of the nation. This country can do little or nothing for them. Italy is a sinking boat. Will it continue to take on water? This, of course, provides for the immediate expatriation of anyone who is not Italian and has committed a crime on Italian soil. Drug dealing, being escorted to the door, raping. Have you squatted in a house or apartment? The concept does not change. Step 12. Dismantle the Italian incarceration system. Try to think about it for a moment. A person commits a crime and therefore has to serve X number of months or years to be served, and in all that time that person has not been trained nor received notions to be a support of society. He has only paid his punishment. Is this useful? Absolutely not. The prison system, if structured intelligently, should not give a penalty in relation to time, but in the number of exams passed and books read. In other words, a prisoner who ceases to be a prisoner is no longer a burden for society, but a resource. Put even more simply, you will get out of jail when you know what Aristotle said about honesty or Schopenhauer about ethics. Step 13. Italian wages. Have you ever wondered why in many states an employee can easily receive €25 on average for every hour of work, and the Italian president talks about €9 and it seems that he is also doing you a favor? The government doesn't want to give up your money. If an entrepreneur gave you €25 an hour, it means you get 14. The fault is not of the entrepreneur, who is strangled from the very beginning of his company. If we see that a human being has to live with dignity, and move away from the idea of having to steal or take advantage of the system, then he should earn that amount, in terms of gross. Step 14. Right to work in single contract. It is useless to have pro and co contracts. An employee has a regular employment contract or not. Otherwise it would be an occasional service, but if you are a worker, you have the right to have a house and a credit. So how do they teach the economies that work? And I'm talking about Iceland, Norway and Denmark. A single, national contract, with no other variables, on which taxes do not have to converge for the first year of employment. Step 15. Taxes. If the percentage of taxes you pay is more than 20%, you've been ripped off, cheated, and you're literally working for the state, which is supposed to work for the community, and the community needs that other 75%. Step 16. The mafia. Kill ignorance, kill hunger, and you will have cut off the oxygen reserves of the underworld. The Camorra and organized criminal societies, if they had wanted to eliminate them, they would have been eliminated. Do you really believe in the fairy tale of the fight against the underworld? Do you really think there can be an economy if an entrepreneur has to pay the pizzo? You really believed that it's possible to tell a person not to deal drugs when that same person can't find a job? Step 17. Centralize all the documentation and the bureaucratic part on a single internet portal. When was the last time you needed the regional authority? The region has some utilities that can't be handled by a single call center, a website, and a qualified help desk. The same goes for embassies. Apart from the billionaire savings you would get as an Italian, but how long do you wait for a document or a file in Italy? In other words, cutting red tape. Step 18. Education. The state must commit to guaranteeing education to families who cannot afford it. A person who has read 3 books in his life, and does not speak a second language, will not even have great ideas, and cannot make a great economy. I keep seeing people who get lost in a glass of water. The government wants you malleable, so when you see the parliament at work you always think that they are working on it, and the sad thing is that some people really believe it. You can't hope to dismantle the mafia if you don't get people to read history, and to read history, fund education. Step 19. The squatting of houses and apartments must be solved in real time. There are people who have worked all their lives with a dream called home. You cannot base an economy in a place where anyone can steal your house, and honestly, it is not worth fighting for a country that cannot guarantee security even in its own home. Step number 20. PNNR. An allocation of $194 billion destined for the restart of the Italian economy, and the problems would be solved if added to the previous 19 strengths of these steps. However, the Italian government has allocated these funds to climate change mitigation technologies, digital transition, made in Italy brands in the space sector. The average Italian user, it will not even be touched by the wave of change, simply because there will be no real change. Now imagine what would happen in Italy if the entire devolved of the PNNR were destined to ideas, to those who want to do business useful to the community, to those who want to create jobs. Of course I know, if you're Italian you watch this video article and think, but to do all these things you would have to change the Italian constitution. Well, it's already been done 21 times. I don't understand why the 22nd is a problem. To some it may seem like a science fiction article, yet I have analyzed various variables calculating the central problems of the Italian economy and eliminating hypotheses of untargeted solutions. I know that they would be radical choices, and I also know that this article will be limited to being just an article. You can reverse the roles of these rules or add others, but in the end you will come to the same conclusion. The economy needs to be changed. When a battery runs out you change it. You don't make a reform, you rarely recharge it. You certainly don't make new laws, you just change it. The Italian system needs to be replaced. You don't need a new president, you don't even need to look for a job. Either you do what is right or you go abroad. Maybe in those places where the economy works, you didn't take to the streets to protest when the government deprived you of a democratic choice, and now you complain that there is no democracy. Italy is the country of maximum effort with minimum return, or, you can reverse these two actions, in one word: revolution.
Sentite gente vicina e lontana, voi che tenete sulle sue stipate, ha tanto tempo che aspettate la fortuna e si è cercato non va fa trovare nessuno.